I have all my paintbrushes. And the palette goes on the drawer. You can do up to 24 to 30 on this thing. Canvas size.
Yeah, good morning.
How about, I think that one, that'd be a good.
I've seen you work with that too, so.
This one, Rich Designs has this. I'll never be able to get that painting back. Okay, another thing when you're painting, and this is another reason for standing to paint, you really want the painting at eye level. You don't want to be looking down or up because it affects your perspective in your drawing. So you want to be eye level. The rule of thumb at the Art Institute was if you had a such and such size painting, you didn't want the painting over your head too far or down too far. You wanted, just about eye level. Mm-hmm. Now for a block-in, what I want to establish with this is the general composition. Here, I'll move this over a little bit. Is the general composition, how things lay on the canvas. And I want to do it as accurately as possible. But, we're all human and we have to let the painting evolve. And sometimes you have to make a little correction. I use a piece of vine charcoal, you guys. And it might work, I think it works with watercolor paper too. Vine charcoal is made from burning grapevine. That's why it's called vine charcoal. It doesn't have any real tinting strength, any real pigment strength. So if you make a mark, you can take it off pretty easily. Take a rag and wipe it off. It's not like a pencil where you're going
like a number 2.
Right. Yeah. And so, I can take and get it out of the way. And so vine charcoal is a great way to lay out. I think it might work about the same with paper. It may bond a little bit, but with the canvas, you see it pretty much comes out. My medium, I use just, this is my dirty turp jar. I use turpentine or mineral spirits, the odorless mineral spirits. And for a medium, I use Gamblin's medium, it's called Galkin. So, yeah, I like the Galkin myself because it's a little less viscous.
Yeah.
I like these because they clip onto the palette.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about knocking off.
Yeah.
I use Jerry's Autorama to buy all my stuff. It's a little less viscous.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff as that. I like it because it dries overnight.
Yeah, this too.
Right. It's the same. They're both alkyds.
Yeah.
And Gamblin makes a thick one called Galkin. Mm-hmm. And this is called Galkin Light. And it's a little runnier. So what I like about it, you can make a little better gestural brush strokes. You can make, it's not quite, it's a
less grabby?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I use it from beginning to end.
Oh yeah,
well, now at the Art Institute, we did a thing called fat over lean. You always had to paint with more oil over less oil. So when we did a block-in on a painting, it was straight turpentine. And then you built to more oil. Then you use what we call them. Did you get it done?
No.
Oh, that got it. We used what was called a Merringer medium, which was 3 parts turpentine to 1 part stand oil to 1 part Darmar varnish. And that was the medium that we used. But it's slow drying, and I didn't like putting drying agents in it. So this new stuff is really good. I really like it. And that's the same stuff, just a different manufacturer. This is just a lighter viscosity.
Well, what we do is add a little bit of this to make what viscosity we want.
Right. Well, that changes the drying, I think, a little bit.
Does it?
All right, so now I've selected this photograph. Why have I selected this? What is my motivation? Why do I want to paint this? That's the first question I ask myself. What do I want to communicate? And so, just like Michelle said earlier, I love the solitude of this. I love the quietness of this, with the reflection, very quiet. Mm-hmm. You know, I really like that aspect. So that's primarily the quality of the day. That's not a bright sunny day. Mm-hmm. That's an overcast day. And so I want to think about that. I don't want to just think, oh, I'm doing a landscape. What kind of a day is it? What kind of a feeling does it give me? So that's the first thought. And then I want to start laying out the composition. So looks like they're about the same size. So I can cheat here a little bit. So this is my horizon line for the pond, and then I've got the trees, and I've got a tree here, and a tree here, and here, and here. Now with art, you're not doing a photograph, you're not recreating reality, you're making artwork, you're making a painting. I think Professor Wilbur Newell. Mm-hmm. Wilbur was so adamant about accuracy. They say he's a nut for Cezanne. Wilbur's stuff looked like Cezanne. It looked very Cezanne. I mean, same technique. He painted like Cezanne. It was his idol. And they say Cezanne was so literal in his plein air landscapes. For 30 years, you could go stand in the spot he stood where he did the painting. You could take a print and find that spot. He was that literal. So that's how I was taught. So I'm out painting one day with a friend, and we were over Lake George painting. And I was doing a painting of the Platte River through there. And there was a rock in the composition that was in there. And so Chuck and I, he comes over and he's looking at work, and he said, that rock really, that doesn't work there. It's really throwing your composition. I said, yeah, I know. But he said, well, move the damn thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I could do that. So I moved the rock, made a better painting. But that's how ingrained it was in me. You know, you're making artwork, you guys. You're not copying that photograph verbatim. You don't have to make that photograph verbatim. You're making artwork. You want to make changes to make the painting stronger, make those changes. You know, it's, okay, technique. Now this may sound really stupid. If it does, just ignore it. But the way you hold your brush changes the way you paint. And I held a paintbrush like this forever. That's how I held it, like a pencil. That's how I held a paintbrush. And I've been struggling with being not loose enough, not being painterly enough. And so about 20 years ago, I was painting, and I'm painting. And I look around, and all these guys are holding the paintbrushes like this. And I thought, and they were, everyone was. And I thought, man, so I tried it. It felt awkward as hell. It just did not feel right. But I kept doing it. And after a few days, I realized it made me more gestural. I made better brush strokes. Now I can't think of it. I hold the brush this way. And if you think about it, holding a brush like a pencil, you make a stroke with your wrist. Whether you're standing or sitting, you're making a stroke with your wrist. And I do big paintings, you guys. I love 48 by 60. I mean, yeah, I love big paintings. And even on small paintings, it makes a big difference. But you make brush strokes like this because you're painting with your wrist. You hold a brush like this, you don't paint with your wrist, you paint with your arm. And you make bigger, better brush strokes. You make them more gestural. Mm. And so, if you don't do that, I'm recommending, nothing, like I say, nothing's dogma here. I'm recommending you try it, humor me, and it's more than said. It doesn't feel comfortable at first, but man, it changes the way you paint. So that's my initial drawing. That's it. So direct painting, and the front to back thing you talked about earlier. There is a front to back on a block end to a point. Mm-hmm. And that's it. You can block it because I don't want to lay the trees and then try and lay the sky behind that. Because that's harder to do. So my blocking, what I want to establish is, and I squint down to photographs like this, what I want to establish are these major forms. Okay? And so the first thing I want to do is the sky. So I'm going to get a little of my phthalo. And the sky, if you notice, is not a bright blue. It's a pretty gray blue. I see, actually, if I really study it and think about it, I see a little red in that blue. You've been talked about with color temperature, warm, cold. And so, you know, actually this yellow is a warmer yellow than this yellow. This has got a little bluish kind of a cast to it, that lemon yellow. So, you know, you think in terms of temperature. So if I want to red this up a little bit, this red's a little too warm. So I want to use a cooler red, so I'm going to use the alizarin permanent. And it doesn't take much. So, and then I love that you can cheat with the photograph and actually do that. Richard Smith. Are you guys familiar with Richard Smith? No. Look up Richard Smith. Go home and Google Richard Smith, S-C-H-M-I-D. He just passed away about 2 years ago. I think he was probably the greatest painter in America for the last 20, 30 years. He's got instruction books, he's got videos. One of his videos, he's out doing a plein air, and he's painting the ground, and he says, here, look at the dirt. And he reaches down, grabs the dirt, throws it on the palette. That's the color I want. But Smith was not only a great painter, he was a great teacher. But I really look up Smith.
Okay, I see what you're doing.
So for my block-in, I'm thinking about several things. You know, the shape, the value, and the brush strokes. So for me, a sky feels vertical. So I'm going to mostly land my brush strokes vertical. And believe it or not, you guys, however obvious the brush strokes are, they're there, they're subtle, and they actually have an impact on the object you're painting, the dimension of that object. So brush strokes, don't make brush strokes a brush stroke, just like the trees here above. Don't make them just this. Make them more descriptive. Make them define what you're painting. Now, if you have any questions while I'm doing this, ask away. When I do a block-in, I like to get the whole painting surface covered in my setting. And then when I'm actively painting, I usually have 3 or 4 paintings going at once, because that way I can keep working. And so, like on a block-in, I'm going to block this in, and I'm going to stop for the day. I'm going to let the paint dry overnight. And I don't fight it. And I used to fight it when I was younger. I used to fight the wet paint. And I've gotten smarter as I've gotten older, and I go, oh, let it dry and it'll be easier to work on. And that's where this alkyd really...
I found that I had to redo things when I was fighting wet paint.
Yep. And it's really redundant. I mean, and when Smith would make a change on his painting, if he's working, he'd wipe it off with a paper towel. Why try and paint on this stuff you've already... He'd wipe it down, scrape it all cleaned off, and start fresh again. If he was making a change on a block-in, for example.
Yeah.
But technique and style go hand in hand. And you guys, there's the insidious thing about art is it becomes kind of automatic, and it's almost hypnotic. You know, when I get in the zone, time just goes by. I don't realize it. Oh, it's been 3 hours. But the danger when you get in the zone also is it becomes too automatic. You're not making conscious brush strokes. You're not making a thought about that exact. You're thinking about this, or you're drifted off here. You want to be in the moment, and you want to be with the painting. You want to be in that zone. You want to make sure that you're conscious of what you're doing. Oh, This is all I'm going to do for my block in the sky. The color's close. I'm going to make it more accurate, work it in. And I'm going to jump down to the water because I'm still in this process. But if you notice, the water is a lot more purple and a little darker. And so I'm going to lay in, and I'm going to ignore the reflections at this point, pretty much, because of the trees and stuff. But you don't, absolutely on a block in, you do not want to start tight. Because what happens is, if you start tight, where can you go? You can't go tighter. You want to start gestural and loose and work to more finished. Because the painting evolves more naturally that way, if that makes any sense. It's like making a meatloaf. You know, you have to put all those ingredients together and go through the process of baking it to get the finished product, to get the meatloaf. It's the same thing with the block in. I don't want to try and do little finished pieces yet. I want to establish the strength of the bigger elements of the painting. Keep your brush clean. You know, don't get lazy. One thing that I do, and what we're always fussed about, was I run out of color on my palette and I just keep painting. And that's the worst thing in the world to do. We just get lazy. If you run out of that yellow, put more of that yellow on the palette because you're just going to get in the habit of picking the other yellow. So make sure you keep your palette loaded. Make sure you keep your palette clean. If your palette gets to the point where it's loaded with paint, wipe the damn thing off and keep going. Because all these mud, mud and paint, I see that more in paintings in amateurish stuff than anything. Their colors get so muddy that they lose that oomph. So, naturally the next step would be to lay in the trees. And so I'm going to squint down and look at the trees and get the general value and color. Which is going to go mid-range. You know, when you squint down, it darkens a little bit and you lose all those little nuances. So that's what I'm looking at, and that's what I want to paint. And again, the green, I'm going to grab some of this transparent yellow, and obviously my blue, and then I'm going to muddy it down a little bit with my red, and use some of my zinc white. And maybe just a little more. Okay. And again, I want to think about the quality of the tree and the way it feels. And nice gestural brushstroke, but describing the shape. You see how I'm laying in the strokes, you guys?
Mm-hmm.
I'm laying the strokes in a different manner than I laid in the sky. Being on the edge, sometimes this tree on the edge, you got to watch stuff getting close to the edge and being too defined. You know, this would be worse if I cut the tree off at the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So when I took the photograph, I really should have got a little more sky behind it. But as an artist, I can change that and put a little more, move the tree over a little bit. And so that's a conscious thing that I will do when the painting progresses, is actually move a few things around and make them compose a little better. And I'm not trying to do all the same green. I'm trying to do just a little bit of variety, but still kind of grayed down. Just to add just a little bit of variety to the block in. Okay, so now the grass here. But you see how I hold the brush this way? I can articulate it. I can roll it and articulate. I love these, by the way. It's called an angular sash.
Okay.
I'll do a whole painting with this one brush. Never change brushes. If it's a small, I've got a big angular side. I don't think I brought one. Yeah, I do. They have two sizes is all they have because I guess they know artists like this size and this size. But the great thing about this angular sash is I can lay it on the edge and do this. I discovered these, I don't know, quite a while ago, but it's my go-to brush. You gotta watch out, you guys, for technique getting in the way of making art. You know, Bob Ross, the one thing, he's all about technique. That's what he teaches, is technique. You know, he's got his fan brush that he does this with. And he's got his, looks like a house painter brush that he does a lot of stuff with. But, you know, his brush is defining his technique. I define my technique using this brush. Does that?
Yeah.
So, I like the brush because it is so versatile. You know, I can do many, many different things with this brush.
Is that the Princeton?
It is a Princeton, that's right.
6300? Or
It's a Princeton Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all we use.
Yeah, I like them. I've been using them for a long time. Yeah. So what I'm trying to establish with this is that overall composition of this painting. You know, the major forms and stuff. There's no way I'm going to try and finish this. So I see a lot of warmth in the grass. Lots of browns and earth tones.
Mm-hmm.
And so and again, that form is going this way. The mass is going this way. That's why I'm making my brush strokes. Making the brush strokes descriptive. So already you see in the block-in, in the initial block-in, you're starting to feel the form without any real definition. Because I've done it with the way I'm applying these brush strokes. So for the horizon line, for the bank, where you've got that spot here, I'm going to lay in a brush stroke that's this way. And then just kind of muddy it up here. And now I'm going to kind of draw in the trees. And that would be my initial block-in for this painting. And
None of the reflective stuff.
well, it'll evolve. I mean, it comes as you work the form up, you know, tighter and tighter, or more finished and more finished. But you don't do that with the block-in. The block-in's like you don't build a wall and then the foundation. You build the foundation and then the wall. And so paintings are built. I mean, they really do, like Michelangelo carving that figure out of the stone. You know, I read where a painter saw himself as pulling the image from the canvas. And so, you know, these kinds of concepts where we get in a hurry to see a finished thing, you know, see it complete with the first brush stroke. I mean, we want to, in our mind's eye, we've got it. You know, this is what I want to paint. But the reality is it has to come through. It has to be made. It has to go through stages. So, let's see. The tree trunks, aren't those an interesting color? Those old cottonwood. Almost pink. And the value's pretty. And I don't paint as well when I'm talking and doing the displays I do when I'm in the studio more focused, you know. And you guys are familiar with positive, negative on shapes? So the positive shape for this area is the trees. The negative shape is the space between.
Mm-hmm.
And so I notice in the block right here, I'm a little too far to the left. And this needs to be a little closer like that. So my negative space helps me to find that area. So, you know, as you're going along, you want to see and make corrections. Like we talked about earlier, I want to move this tree in just a little more. So that's a conscious thought, you know, not an accident. I want this tree in a little farther to keep it away from the edge. So you're evolving in the right direction. Now, for working the water, if you notice, because reflections usually are a lot deeper, but I'm getting all the colors I need and all the colors I want with just this limited palette, you guys. I don't know how extensive your palettes are, but look at trying a limited palette of some kind, where you're just using primary colors and a couple of whites and a couple of, and something to make, I like the Payne's Gray. So, if I were in the studio, I would have backed up a lot more. And backing up, I see I'm kind of getting what I expect, what I want to get. But by painting this loosely, it's a lot easier for me to make corrections and move the painting along than if I painted really tight and tried to finish higher. Pull the whole thing along at once, it really does make a stronger painting. So anyway, that's that pretty much. You know, I might start to indicate some of these things. And that's blocking.